Hello, you tired little peeps. It's that time once again. So let's snuggle up fast because tonight we're traveling back in time to walk through the crowded squares and examine the intricate economic machinery of the slave markets in ancient Rome. So if you are new to the channel or returning, liking the video significantly helps. Also, please let me know where you're listening in from and what time it is for you. Now get comfortable and let's begin. To understand the slave markets of Rome, we must first understand the very stones upon which these transactions took place. Imagine the early morning light filtering through the columns of the Temple of Castor and Pollux. The air is cool, not yet heated by the midday Italian sun, and the dust of the city has settled overnight, leaving a thin film on the cobblestones. The city is waking up, but the business of the markets began long before the sun crested the 7 hills. This is not merely a place of commerce, it is the beating heart of an empire's labor force, a place where human potential is quantified, categorized, and exchanged with the same mundane regularity as grain or olive oil. We are walking towards the Greco Stadium, or perhaps the Septa Julia, areas often associated with high-volume trade. The architecture here is imposing. Massive blocks of travertine and tufa rise up to support porticos that offer shade to the merchants. The shadows are long and sharp. You can see the grain in the stone, the way centuries of wear have smoothed the corners of the steps leading up to the platforms. It is a world built on solidity, on permanence, and yet the lives traded here are transient, moving from master to master, from province to province, driven by the invisible currents of supply and demand. The concept of the market is ancient. Before Rome was a marble metropolis, it was a collection of huts, and even then, the exchange of labor was a fundamental part of existence. But as we stand here in the imperial era, the scale is vastly different. The slave market is not a hidden corner of society. It is central. It is visible. It is as ordinary to the Roman citizen as the bakery or the bathhouse. There is no hush of secrecy here, only the low hum of negotiation, the scratching of styluses on wax tablets, and the shuffling of sandals against the pavement. Let us look closely at the physical arrangement of the space. The dealers, known as mangones, have set up their stations. These are not temporary stalls thrown together with wood and canvas, but established podiums. The wood of the platforms is worn smooth by thousands of feet. It is dark, perhaps oiled to preserve it against the weather. Upon these platforms stand the individuals up for sale. They are arranged with a specific intent, a visual hierarchy that tells the buyer exactly what is being offered before a word is spoken. The legal framework surrounding these markets is incredibly dense and complex. It is a bureaucracy of ownership. The aediles, the magistrates responsible for the maintenance of public buildings and regulation of public festivals, also have jurisdiction here. They have set strict rules for the vendors. A scroll hangs from a pillar nearby, the text dense and written in formal Latin legal script. It outlines the requirement for honesty in the declaration of defects. If a slave has a history of running away, or a disease, or a tendency toward theft, it must be declared. This is not out of humanitarian concern, but to protect the buyer, the citizen, from a faulty investment. The text on the scroll is precise, the ink faded slightly by the sun, but the authority it carries is absolute. As we observe the scene, notice the lack of urgency. This is boring history after all. There is no dramatic music, no sudden shouting. Most transactions are slow. A buyer approaches a platform. He is wearing a simple tunic, perhaps a toga if he is a man of status conducting business on his way to the forum. He stops. He looks. He does not rush. He circles the platform, examining the posture of the person standing there. The dealer stands to the side, hands clasped, waiting. He knows that patience is the key to a good price. He might gesture to a specific attribute, a strong arm or a clear set of teeth, but his movements are practiced and economical. The light shifts as the morning progresses. The shadows shorten. The stone of the marketplace begins to warm up, radiating a gentle heat that you can feel through the soles of your sandals. The smell of the market is distinct. It is not just the smell of unwashed bodies, though that is present. It is the smell of old leather from the sandals and belts, the smell of dust kicked up by the crowd, the faint scent of garum from a nearby food stall, and the metallic tang of bronze coins changing hands. Consider the placards hanging around the necks of those on the platforms. These are the tituli. They are rectangular boards, usually made of wood, sometimes painted white with black text. The lettering is functional, blocky, and standard. It lists the name, though often the name is irrelevant or assigned by the dealer. It lists the age. It lists the nationality: Thracian, Gaul, Syrian, Nubian. These words carry heavy implications for the buyer. A Thracian might be presumed to be strong but rebellious. A Greek might be presumed to be educated but cunning. These stereotypes are the shorthand of the market, a way to categorize human complexity into manageable, purchasable units. The detail on the titulus goes further. It might state novitius, meaning new to slavery. This is a valuable trait. It implies the person has not yet learned the tricks of the trade, has not yet been spoiled by a lenient master or corrupted by the rough life of the city barracks. A veterator, on the other hand, is an experienced slave. They know the city, they know the work, but they also know how to navigate the system, how to skim a little off the top of the shopping money, how to feign illness. The buyer weighs these words carefully, staring at the painted letters as if they hold the key to the future efficiency of his household. We see a transaction taking place near the fountain. The fountain itself is a marvel of engineering, water flowing steadily from a bronze spout shaped like a lion's head into a stone basin. The water is clear, reflecting the sky. Two men are speaking in low tones. One is holding a leather pouch. He opens it, revealing the dull shine of silver denarii. The coins are counted out, one by one, into the palm of the dealer. It is a slow, rhythmic process. 1, 2, 3. The coins are inspected. The dealer bites one gently to test its purity, a habit ingrained over years of trade. He nods. The pouch is closed. A hand is shaken. Ownership has transferred. There is no fanfare. A ledger is opened. A name is scratched out, and a new entry is made. The bureaucracy of Rome marches on, documenting every exchange, ensuring that the tax is paid, that the order is maintained. Let us pause to consider the geography of supply. How did these people arrive here, on this specific wooden platform in the center of the world? The roads of Rome are famous for their straightness, for their durability. They stretch out from the golden milestone in the Forum to the edges of the known world. Along these roads, the captives of war marched. Imagine the long, slow trudge, mile after mile, the sound of thousands of feet on the hard-packed earth, the dust rising in clouds that can be seen for miles. This journey is part of the product history, a logistical feat that brings labor from the frontiers of the Rhine or the deserts of Africa to the household of a senator on the Palatine Hill. The market is also filled with those born into this state. The vernae. These are the house-born slaves. They have never known a life outside the dominion of a master. They are often prized for their loyalty, or at least their familiarity with the Roman way of life. They speak Latin without an accent. They know the customs. They are standing on the platforms too, perhaps looking less bewildered than the fresh captives, more resigned, more bored. They watch the crowd with a knowing eye, evaluating the potential masters just as they are being evaluated. They look at the sandals, the quality of the fabric, the jewelry. They know that a man wearing a toga with a broad purple stripe is a senator, a man of power, but perhaps a man with a large, impersonal household where one can get lost in the crowd. A man in a rough tunic might be a craftsman, a harsher master who will work alongside them, but watch them every minute of the day. The ambient sound of the market is a consistent, low-frequency drone. It is the sound of a city at work. There are conversations happening in a dozen languages: Latin, Greek, Oscan, Aramaic. But the dominant tongue is the administrative Latin of the deal. Numbers are spoken clearly. Prices are haggled over. "Too high," a buyer murmurs, shaking his head slowly. "He has a limp." The dealer counters, keeping his voice even. "It is a temporary strain from the journey. Look at his shoulders. He is strong." The negotiation is a dance, a ritual that has been performed millions of times in this very spot. Let us look at the feet of the people here. The diversity of footwear tells a story of its own. The senators in their calce, the distinct red boots of the patricians, soft leather wrapping high around the ankle. The soldiers in their caligae, heavy hobnailed sandals that click against the stone, signaling authority and force. The common citizens in simple soleil, and the slaves, mostly barefoot, their feet calloused and hardened by exposure to the elements. The stone floor of the market is a great equalizer of footsteps, but the coverings of the feet define the hierarchy instantly. In the corner of the market, there is a specialized section. This is where the luxury slaves are sold. The atmosphere here is quieter, more refined. The platforms are covered with rugs. The slaves here are not laborers. They are specialized tools of culture. Here stands a Greek tutor, an older man with a beard and a weary expression. He is being sold not for his muscle, but for his mind. He knows Homer. He can teach a young Roman boy rhetoric and philosophy. The price for him is astronomical, equivalent to the cost of a small farm. Next to him might be a musician, holding a lyre, or a specialized cook who knows how to prepare dormice in honey and poppy seeds. The buyers here are accompanied by stewards, men who manage the finances of great houses. They inspect these human commodities with the eye of a collector examining a rare statue. The sun has moved higher now. It strikes the white marble of the surrounding temples, creating a glare that forces one to squint. The shadows have retreated, hiding under the porticos. The heat is rising. The pace of the market slows slightly as the midday approaches. People move more sluggishly. The dealer takes a sip of water from a clay jug. He wipes his brow with the back of his hand. The business continues, relentless and pervasive. We are observing the foundational layer of Roman society. Without this market, the baths would not be heated, the fields would not be tilled, the aqueducts would not be maintained, and the silver would not be mined. It is a system of immense cruelty, yes, but for the Roman observer, it is simply the way the world functions. It is as natural as the flooding of the Tiber or the changing of the seasons. To sleep, we must accept this reality, observe it without judgment, simply as a mechanism of history, a complex machine of flesh and coin turning slowly, endlessly, under the Mediterranean sun. The texture of the air seems to thicken with the heat. Dust motes dance in the shafts of light that pierce the shade of the awnings. We can see the details of the awnings themselves. Heavy canvas, perhaps dyed in stripes of red and ochre, stretched taut over wooden frames to provide relief from the sun. The fabric ripples gently in the occasional breeze, a slow, undulating movement that is hypnotic to watch. The ropes holding the awnings are thick hemp, knotted securely by hands that knew the sea. Every element of this scene, from the canvas to the stone to the human interactions, is a testament to the organizational power of Rome. The sun is now directly overhead, casting the market in a stark, uncompromising light. Shadows have virtually disappeared, pooling only directly beneath the carts and the raised platforms. The heat radiates upwards from the travertine paving stones, creating a shimmering effect in the air, a mirage that makes the distant figures at the end of the septa, Julia, appear to waver slightly. We continue our slow, methodical observation of the slave market, moving deeper into the mechanics of this daily operation. Let us focus on the Mango, the slave dealer. He is a pivotal figure here, a man of commerce who stands at the intersection of supply and demand. He is not necessarily a man of high status. In fact, his profession is looked down upon by the aristocratic elite who rely on his services. Yet, he wields significant power in this specific square. Watch him. He is dressed in a tunic that is clean but functional, perhaps a shade of unbleached wool. He wears a heavy belt from which hangs a purse and a set of keys. Keys are a symbol of his trade. Keys to the holding cells, keys to the shackles, keys to the storerooms. His face is a mask of professional neutrality. He does not show eagerness, nor does he show disdain. When a potential buyer approaches, the Mango's eyes flick over him, assessing his wealth, his intent, his likely needs. Is this a farmer looking for a field hand? A major domo from a senator's villa looking for a kitchen maid? The dealer adjusts his pitch accordingly. His voice is a steady drone, listing attributes like items on a grocery list. Healthy, strong teeth, docile temperament, speaks a little Greek. The words are repetitive, worn smooth by constant use. Consider the documentation involved. It is not just the titulus around the neck. There is the transfer of ownership, the mancipatio. This is a formal legal ritual for certain types of property, including slaves. It requires the presence of 5 witnesses and a scale holder. We can see a group gathering for this purpose near a pillar. The bronze scales are held up. A piece of bronze or copper is touched to the scales as a symbolic payment. Formulaic words are spoken. I declare this man to be mine according to the law of the Quirites, and he is purchased by me with this piece of bronze and these bronze scales. The ritual is archaic, dating back to the earliest days of Rome, yet it is performed here with rigid adherence to tradition. It anchors the transaction in the bedrock of Roman law, making it binding, making it real. We move our gaze to a different section of the market, where the mercies are displayed. These are the general laborers, the ones destined for the hard, grinding work of the empire. They are not standing on the plush rugs of the luxury section. They stand on bare wood. Their bodies are inspected with a clinical detachment. A buyer runs his hands over the muscles of a man's arm, squeezes the calf, checks the flexibility of the joints. It is a physical examination, identical to how one might check a horse or an ox. The person being inspected stands still, eyes often fixed on a point in the middle distance, enduring the touch. Resistance would only lower their value, and perhaps lead to a worse placement. The sounds of the market shift slightly as the afternoon wears on. The initial rush of the morning has passed, and the pace becomes even more languid. The sharp clack of the auctioneer's hammer is heard less frequently. Now it is the low murmur of private deals. We hear the scratching of a stylus on a wax tablet. A scribe sits on a small stool, recording the sales for the tax collector. The tax on slave sales is significant, a revenue stream for the state. Every sale contributes to the treasury, funding the legions, the roads, the games. The scribe's hand moves efficiently, the stylus digging into the soft wax, leaving behind a trail of Roman numerals and abbreviated Latin names. Let us observe the clothing of the slaves on the platforms. Most are dressed in simple tunics, often of coarse wool. The color is usually a dull gray or brown, the natural color of the undyed sheep's wool. Some, to show off their physique, are stripped to the waist. The dealer might oil their skin to make the muscles stand out, to give them a healthy sheen that catches the light. It is a trick of the trade, a visual marketing tactic. For those from colder climates, perhaps a Gaul or a German, the heat of the Roman day must be oppressive. You can see the sheen of sweat on their brows, the way they shift their weight from foot to relieve the pressure on the hot wood. There is a water carrier moving through the crowd. He is a young boy, perhaps a slave himself, carrying a large amphora on his shoulder and a stack of clay cups. He calls out in a high, clear voice, offering water to the thirsty merchants and buyers. For a small coin, a copper as, one can get a cup of cool water. The dealer we were watching earlier signals to the boy. He buys a cup, drinks it in one long draught, and then splashes the last few drops onto the face of a slave who looks like he might faint from the heat. It is not an act of kindness. It is maintenance of the merchandise. A fainting slave does not sell. We should also look at the chattel nature of these individuals. In Roman law, a slave is a res, a thing. They have no kinship, no legal father, no legal rights to their own body. Standing here in the market, this legal reality is made physical. They are objects to be moved, stored, and utilized. Yet, the human element persists. We might see a glance exchanged between two people on adjacent platforms, a momentary connection between two strangers who share the same fate, a whispered word when the dealer's back is turned. These small acts of defiance, of retaining humanity, are invisible to the buyers, but essential to the survival of the spirit. Let's drift towards the area where the agricultural slaves are sold. These are men and women destined for the latifundia, the vast estates in the countryside. They are often sold in groups, familia rustica. The buyers here are bailiffs or stewards of large landowners. They are looking for endurance above all else. They examine the hands. Are they broad? Are they capable of gripping a hoe or a scythe for 12 hours a day? They look at the back. Is it straight? Capable of carrying heavy loads? The conversation here is about crop cycles, about the harvest, about the need for hands to press the grapes or harvest the olives. The slaves here will likely never see the city again. They will be taken to the hills of Tuscany or the plains of Campania to live in barracks and work the soil until they can work no more. In contrast, nearby is the section for familia urbana, the city household slaves. Here, appearance matters more. A doorman, an ostiarius, needs to be imposing but polite. A hairdresser, an ornatrix, needs delicate fingers and an eye for fashion. A litter-bearer needs to be tall and walk with a smooth gait so as not to jostle the master. The scrutiny here is more detailed. A buyer might ask a potential hairdresser to braid a piece of rope to demonstrate her skill. He might ask a potential secretary to read a few lines from a scroll to test his literacy. The tests are practical, immediate assessments of utility. The shadows begin to lengthen again as the sun moves past its zenith. The light turns a warmer gold, softening the harsh angles of the stone buildings. The temple of Castor and Pollux casts a long shadow that creeps across the forum floor. the activity in the market undergoes a subtle change. The serious buyers, the ones with large contracts to fill, have mostly finished their business. Now come the browsers, the smaller household owners looking for a single servant, perhaps a nanny for a child or a companion for an elderly parent. We see a woman, a matron, accompanied by a maidservant. She walks with dignity, her stola draping elegantly around her. She stops at a platform where a young girl is standing. The girl is perhaps 12 or 13. The matron speaks to the dealer, her voice low and cultured. She asks about the girl's disposition. Is she quiet? Is she obedient? Does she know how to spin wool? The dealer nods, assuring her. The matron approaches the girl, reaching out to lift her chin, looking into her eyes. It is an intimate yet entirely impersonal gesture. The girl lowers her eyes, a sign of submission that pleases the matron. The deal is made quietly. The girl steps down from the platform, falling in behind the maidservant, her life's trajectory completely altered in the span of 5 minutes. The ground beneath our feet is littered with the debris of the day: straw used for packing, broken bits of pottery, an occasional dropped coin, the peel of a fruit. The scopari, the sweepers, will come later to clean this up. For now, it is part of the texture of the place. The smell of the market has evolved too. The heat has baked the dust, and the scent of roasting meat from a nearby vendor is stronger now, mixing with the ever-present smell of humanity. Let's examine the cages. Not all slaves are displayed on open platforms. Some, the barbarians from the wilder frontiers, those deemed dangerous or likely to run, are kept in wooden cages or chained to the wall. These men often have wild hair and beards, their bodies marked with the tattoos of their tribes. They glare at the passers-by. The dealer keeps a safe distance, using a long stick to point out their features. A gladiator type, he might say, good for the arena, or for the mines. These are the most tragic figures, men of war reduced to caged beasts. Their value lies in their potential for violence or their capacity for suffering. The buyers here are often lanistas, the owners of gladiator schools. They look for aggression, for a certain spark of defiance that will entertain the crowds in the Colosseum. They are not looking for obedience. They are looking for a fighter. The noise of the city outside the market filters in. The rumble of wheels is absent, as carts are banned from the streets during the day, but the noise of construction is constant. Rome is always building. The sound of hammers on stone, of saws cutting timber, provides a rhythmic backdrop to the sales. It is the sound of the empire growing, consuming resources, consuming labor. The slaves being sold here are the fuel for that growth. They will be the ones hauling the stone, mixing the mortar, climbing the scaffolding. As the afternoon progresses, we might see a restitutio. A buyer returns, angry. The slave he bought yesterday has a hidden defect. He snores too loudly, or he has a secret illness. The buyer demands his money back. The dealer argues. He points to the scroll, to the terms of the sale. Caveat emptor. Let the buyer beware. But he also knows that his reputation is his livelihood. If he gets a name for selling bad merchandise, he will lose the patronage of the wealthy houses. A compromise is reached, perhaps a partial refund or an exchange. The defective slave is put back on the block, perhaps with a lower price, or perhaps destined for a harder life in the mills. The sun is dipping lower, turning the sky a pale violet above the rooftops. The pigeons are descending, pecking at the grain spilled on the cobbles. The energy of the market is waning. The dealers are beginning to tally their sales, counting the coins in their pouches. The unsold slaves are given a ration of food, hard bread, perhaps a bit of dried fruit. They eat standing up or sitting on the edge of the platforms. Their day of being on display is ending, but their uncertainty remains. Where will they sleep tonight? In the dealer's holding cell? In a new master's hallway? We observe the closing rituals. The awnings are pulled back, rolled up, and tied. The wooden boards with the prices and details are taken down. The chains are checked. The slaves are lined up, roped together for the walk back to the barracks. It is a somber procession. They move through the darkening streets, a snake of human misery winding its way through the grandeur of the eternal city. The free citizens of Rome walk past them, barely glancing. To them, this is just traffic. It is just the economy moving home for the night. The sun has fully set, and the vibrant, chaotic energy of the Roman day has receded, replaced by the heavy silence of the night. We are now moving away from the public squares, following the line of unsold individuals into the ergastulum, the private holding cells maintained by the slave dealers. These are often located in the sub-basements of large insulae or apartment blocks near the market district. The transition from the open air to this enclosed space is stark. The air here is stagnant, trapped between stone walls that have absorbed the day's heat and now release it slowly, creating a stifling, humid atmosphere. The only light comes from oil lamps set in niches along the walls. The flames flicker, casting long, dancing shadows that distort the proportions of the room. It is a low-ceilinged space, supported by thick wooden beams that are blackened with soot. The floor is packed earth, covered in fresh straw that rustles as people settle down for the night. This is the warehousing phase of the industry. Here, the human inventory is stored, secured, and maintained at the lowest possible cost. There is a guard at the door, a heavy-set man sitting on a stool, sharpening a knife with a whetstone. The rhythmic sound of metal on stone is the only sharp noise in the room. He is bored, likely a slave himself or a freedman of low status, paid to ensure that the dealer's investment does not walk away in the night. He pays little attention to the people in the room, his eyes fixed on the small flame of his lamp. The logistics of keeping this many people in a confined space are complex. We see a large cauldron in the corner, remnants of a grain porridge clinging to its sides. Feeding the stock is a balancing act for the dealer. He must provide enough calories to keep them healthy and marketable. Ribs showing through the skin lowers the price, but he must not spend a denarius more than necessary. The food is bland, a simple mash of spelt or millet, perhaps flavored with a bit of salt or old fish sauce. It is fuel, nothing more. Water is dispensed from a communal barrel. A ladle is passed around. The sound of swallowing, of water splashing slightly onto the straw, fills the quiet moments. Sanitation is crude. A trench in the corner, covered by a wooden board, serves as the latrine. The smell is covered, barely, by the scent of wood smoke and unwashed bodies. It is a sensory environment of confinement, a waiting room between one life and the next. Let us consider the economics that underpin this dark room. The dealer, the mango, is often not the sole owner of these individuals. The slave trade requires significant capital. To bring a shipment of captives from the borders of Dacia or the shores of Syria requires ships, guards, food, and bribes for officials. This costs money, often more than a single dealer possesses. So, behind the scenes, there is a web of investors. Silent partners. These investors might be respectable knights or even senators who would never dirty their hands with the actual trade, but are happy to provide the financing in exchange for a share of the profits. They view this room not as a collection of human beings, but as a diversified portfolio. If one slave dies of a fever, it is a loss, a write-off. If another turns out to be a skilled artisan and sells for a high price, it is a dividend. The ledger books of Rome are filled with these calculations, cold mathematics applied to warm flesh. In the dim light, we can see the variety of humanity forced into this equality of circumstance. A man who was perhaps a warrior in his own tribe sits with his knees pulled to his chest, staring at the wall. A young woman, perhaps a weaver, sleeps exhausted on the straw. They do not speak much. Language barriers are common here. The dealer separates those who speak the same language to prevent plotting, to prevent the formation of solidarity. The silence is enforced by design and by exhaustion. But the night does not last forever. The rhythm of Rome is relentless. Long before dawn, the city begins to stir. The bakers are the first, their ovens firing up to bake the bread for the coming day. We can hear the faint sounds of the city waking up, filtering down into the cell. The guard stands, stretches, and kicks the door. Up, he grunts. It is time to prepare for another day on the block. Let us leave the claustrophobia of the cell and travel in our minds to the source. Let us go to Ostia, the great port at the mouth of the Tiber, about 16 miles from Rome. This is the funnel through which the empire is fed, and through which the slave supply enters the city. The dawn here is different. It smells of salt, of tar, of rotting seaweed. The sky over the Tyrrhenian Sea is a pale gray, brightening rapidly. The harbor is a forest of masts. Ships from every corner of the Mediterranean are docked here. Grain ships from Egypt, huge and bulbous. Wine ships from Gaul. And the slave ships. These are often modified merchant vessels. We are looking at one now, the Fortuna, just tying up at the quay. The ropes are thrown, caught by the dock workers, and pulled taut. The wood of the ship groans as it settles against the stone pier. The unloading process is a study in efficiency. A gangplank is lowered. The captain stands on the deck, holding a manifest. He checks off the cargo as it disembarks. Grain, 500 sacks. Oil, 200 amphorae. Slaves, 40 head. The classification is identical. The slaves walk down the gangplank, blinking in the morning light. They are often chained together at the ankles, a long line of shuffling feet. They are dirty from the voyage, seasick, disoriented. The sea journey was likely horrific, cramped in the hold, but they have survived, and for the captain, that is a successful delivery. Customs officials are waiting on the dock. This is the portorium, the customs tax. Everything entering Rome must be taxed. The officials walk down the line, counting. They check the manifests. They argue with the captain about the value of the cargo. This one is sick, an official points out, poking a man with his stylus. He is not worth the declared value. The tax should be lower. The captain argues back. He is merely seasick. He is strong as an ox. It is a bureaucratic skirmish fought over the bodies of the new arrivals. Once the tax is settled, the slaves are handed over to the agents of the dealers. These agents specialize in transport. They have carts for the weak, but most will walk. The journey from Ostia to Rome is along the Via Ostiensis. It is a busy road, paved with large, flat stones. The traffic is heavy. Ox carts laden with grain, soldiers on patrol, messengers on horseback, and the slave columns. Let us walk alongside one of these columns. The pace is steady. The sun beats down on the road. To the left and right are the tombs of the wealthy Romans, lining the road as was the custom. Elaborate monuments to the dead, watching the enslaved living march past. The irony is likely lost on the marchers, who are focused simply on putting one foot in front of the other. The guards walking alongside carry staves. They do not use them often, only to prod a straggler or to break up a stumble. The landscape is a mix of industrial and agricultural. We pass warehouses, huge brick structures where grain is stored. We pass fields where vegetables are grown for the city's insatiable market. We pass taverns where travelers stop for wine and bread. The slave column does not stop at the taverns. They might pause at a public fountain to drink, cupping the water in their hands before being urged on. As they approach the city, the density of buildings increases. The air becomes thicker with smoke and dust. The noise level rises. They pass through the Porta Ostiensis, the great gate in the Aurelian walls. Entering the city is an assault on the senses. The sheer number of people is overwhelming. For a captive from a small village in Germania or a nomad from the desert, the sight of Rome, the multi-story apartment blocks blocking out the sky, the endless crowds, must be terrifying. It is a labyrinth of stone and noise. They are led not directly to the luxury markets we saw earlier, but often to holding yards on the outskirts or near the river. Here the refurbishing begins. Before they can be sold for a good price, they must be cleaned up. The sea voyage must be washed away. We see a large courtyard with troughs of water. The slaves are ordered to wash. Their hair is cut or shaved depending on the current fashion or the lice situation. They are given fresh tunics, cheap but clean. This is where the whitewashing happens. Chalk might be applied to the feet of those being sold for the first time, a symbol we mentioned earlier. It is a visual code. White feet mean no bad habits yet. It is a branding exercise. The dealers or their assistants inspect them closely now, looking for injuries sustained during the journey. A bruise can be hidden with a bit of makeup or oil. A limp can be explained away. The goal is to present the merchandise in the best possible light. We also see the specialized trainers assessing the new stock. A lanista might walk through the group, looking for that specific build, broad shoulders, thick neck, that suggests a gladiator. A pimp, a leno, might be looking for youth and beauty. A steward from a farm might be looking for sheer size. The sorting process begins here. The group that arrived together on the ship, who perhaps bonded during the terror of the voyage, is now broken apart. One goes to the arena, one to the brothel, one to the fields, one to the city house. The separation is swift and administrative. Let us focus on the medical examination in more detail. A doctor, a medicus, often a slave or freedman himself, is hired by the dealer. He moves down the line. He checks the eyes for cataracts. He checks the mouths for rot. He listens to the breathing, placing his ear against a chest to check for the rattle of consumption. He palpates the abdomen. This is a crucial step. If a slave dies shortly after purchase due to a pre-existing condition, the buyer can sue. The doctor's nod or shake of the head determines the fate of the person standing before him. A reject might be sold for a pittance to a mine, a death sentence in all but name. A prime specimen will be groomed for the high market. The doctor opens a small leather case. Inside are his tools, bronze probes, a spatula for depressing the tongue, small jars of salve. He works quickly, efficiently. He is not gentle, but he is not unnecessarily cruel. He is a mechanic inspecting an engine. He makes notes on a wax tablet, which he then hands to the dealer. This one has a hernia. This one has bad vision in the left eye. The dealer frowns, calculating the lost profit. He marks a lower price on his mental ledger. We are seeing the commodification of the human body in its most absolute form. Every aspect of physiology is assigned a monetary value. Youth is currency. Strength is currency. Fertility is currency. Even a specific skill, like the ability to speak a second language, is an add-on feature that raises the base price. The sun is high again over the holding yard. The smell of wet wool and clean bodies replaces the smell of the road. The slaves are given a meal, better than the ship's rations, to plump them up slightly before the sail. They sit in groups, waiting. The uncertainty is the only constant. They do not know where they are going, who will own them, or what their life will be like tomorrow. They are suspended in the machinery of the Roman economy, waiting for the gears to turn and deposit them into their new existence. We can hear the distant roar of the Colosseum, perhaps a cheer from the crowd. It is a reminder of the violence that underpins this society. The people in the yard might end up there as victims or as combatants, or they might end up in a bakery, kneading dough until their arms ache, or in a fuller's shop, standing in urine to bleach cloth. The variety of fates is endless, but the agency to choose among them is zero. This process, capture, transport, tax, sorting, cleaning, sale, is a continuous loop. As we watch this group being prepped, another ship is docking at Ostia. Another column is forming on the road. Another dealer is checking his inventory. It is a river of human traffic that flows into Rome, disappearing into the houses, the workshops, and the fields, only to be replenished the next day. It is the invisible infrastructure of the empire, as vital and as overlooked as the sewers or the aqueducts. The transaction is complete. The money has changed hands, the tax has been recorded, and the ownership has legally shifted. We now follow a newly purchased individual, let's say a young man named, or renamed, Felix, as he leaves the market square. He follows the steward of a wealthy household. They walk away from the commercial noise of the forum, heading up the slope towards the Esquiline Hill. The walk itself is a transition between worlds. They move from the public, chaotic space of the market to the private, enclosed world of the Roman domus. The streets here are narrow and winding. The buildings rise high on either side, blocking out much of the afternoon light. We can see the texture of the walls, a patchwork of brick, stone, and plaster, often covered in graffiti. The graffiti is mundane. Political slogans, insults, advertisements for gladiatorial games, crude drawings. Felix likely cannot read them, but they form the visual wallpaper of his new reality. The steward walks ahead, confident, knowing the path. Felix walks a pace behind, head down, careful not to bump into the citizens who stride purposefully past. To bump into a citizen is to invite a beating. He is learning the choreography of submission already. They arrive at a large wooden door set into a blank wall. This is the entrance to the house. The steward knocks. The door is opened by the Ianitor, the doorman. This man is also a slave, but one of status. He holds a staff and often sits chained to the doorpost, a symbolic watchdog. He looks at the new arrival with a critical eye, checking him up and down. There is no welcome, merely an assessment. The door closes behind them, shutting out the noise of the city instantly. We are now in the fosses, the entrance hallway. The floor is tiled with mosaics, small black and white stones arranged in geometric patterns. The air is cooler here, smelling of beeswax and lavender. We step into the atrium, the central hall of the house. It is a space of calculated beauty. In the center is the impluvium, a shallow pool designed to catch rainwater falling through the opening in the roof. The compluvium. The water in the pool is still, reflecting the square of sky above. The silence is profound after the roar of the market. It is a controlled silence, the silence of a well-ordered hierarchy. Here, the new arrival is introduced to the atriensis. The atriensis is the manager of the atrium, often the head slave of the household. He is a man of power within these walls. He carries a whip or a rod, symbols of his authority delegated by the master. He inspects Felix. He checks the teeth again, checks the hands. He gives orders in a low, firm voice. You will sleep in the cell near the kitchen. You will report to the cook at dawn. You are to be silent unless spoken to. The instructions are simple, binary. Obey or suffer. Let us look at the clothing transition. The rough tunic from the market is taken away. A new tunic is issued. It is the livery of the house. Perhaps it has a specific colored stripe or a weave that identifies him as property of this specific family. This is the uniform. Putting it on is the final act of shedding the old identity. The clothes he wore from his homeland, if he still had them, are gone. He is now wrapped in Roman wool, dyed with Roman dyes. A crucial element of this new life is the name. The name he was born with, whether it was Celtic, Germanic, or Punic, is often discarded. It is difficult for the Roman tongue to pronounce, or simply irrelevant. He is given a Roman name, Felix, meaning lucky, or Fortunatus, or perhaps a name based on his origin, like Gallus, or a mythological name like Hermes. The naming is an act of possession. When the master calls Felix and he answers, he is validating the master's ownership with his own voice. The old name is whispered only in the dark or forgotten entirely over the years. Let us examine a specific object often associated with this life, the slave collar. While not all slaves wore them, they were common for those who worked in public or had a history of running away. We can visualize a bronze collar, heavy and cold against the skin. It is not jewelry, it is a tag. We can read the inscription on a surviving artifact. It says, Fugi, teneme, cum revocaveris me, diem zonino, axibis solidum. This translates to, I have run away, hold me. When you have returned me to my master's zoniness, you will receive a coin. The collar is a constant physical reminder of status. It chafes the neck. It heats up in the sun and cools down in the winter. It makes sleeping difficult. It marks the wearer as a flight risk, a person to be watched. Citizens on the street see the glint of bronze and know immediately, this person is property. And if he is running, he is a walking reward waiting to be claimed. Now let's look at the daily routine that begins the next morning. It starts before the sun. The house must be ready before the master wakes. The slaves rise in the dark. The scopari begins sweeping the mosaic floors, moving silently so as not to disturb the family. The focarius, the kitchen boy, blows on the embers of the hearth to start the fire. The wood catches. The smoke rises up the chimney. He begins to heat water. The sound of the house waking up is a symphony of muted noises, the brush of a broom, the clink of a pot, the soft footsteps on stone. In a large household, the specialization of labor is extreme. There is a slave whose only job is to polish the silver. He sits at a bench, rubbing the plates and cups with a mixture of chalk and oil until they shine like mirrors. He does this for hours, day after day. His hands are stained gray, his fingernails permanently black. There is a slave whose job is to arrange the master's toga. This is an art form. The toga is a massive piece of heavy wool, semicircular in shape. It requires skill to drape it correctly, to create the sinus and the umbo, the folds that signify a Roman gentleman. The slave, the vestiplicus, stands behind the master, adjusting the heavy fabric, ensuring the lines are perfect. If the fold is wrong, the master looks sloppy in the forum, and the slave is punished. there is the nomenclator. This is a highly specialized slave with a prodigious memory. He walks with the master when he goes out. His job is to remember the names of everyone the master meets. As a citizen approaches, the nomenclator whispers into the master's ear, "This is Marcus, the baker. You helped his son last year." Or, "This is Lucius. He owes you money." He is a living database, a human contact list. His value lies entirely in his neural pathways. If he forgets a name, he embarrasses the master. The pressure is constant. Back in the house, the female slaves, the enslaved, are at work. We see them in the spinning room. The loom is a large vertical wooden frame. The weights, made of clay or stone, hang at the bottom to keep the warp threads taut. The rhythmic thump-thump of the beater packing. The weft threads is hypnotic. They are making the cloth for the household's clothes. It is endless work, spinning wool into thread, weaving thread into cloth. The distaff and spindle are never far from their hands. Even when walking or waiting, they are spinning. A moment of idleness is seen as a vice. The matron of the house supervises them. She might sit in a chair, reading a scroll, while the women work around her. If a thread breaks, or the pattern is wrong, she might strike them with a cane, or prick them with a long hairpin. The violence is casual, corrective, like swatting a fly. It is not necessarily done in anger, but as a matter of course. Discipline must be maintained. Let's descend into the kitchen, the kulina. It is a small, hot, smoky room. There is no chimney in the modern sense. The smoke often escapes through a hole in the ceiling or a high window. The walls are black with years of soot. The cook, the kokus, is the king of this domain. He is often a prized slave, perhaps Greek or Sicilian, known for his sauces. He shouts orders at his assistants. They are chopping vegetables, plucking chickens, grinding spices in a stone mortar. The pestle hits the mortar with a heavy, grinding rhythm. The smell here is intense: garlic, fish sauce, roasting pork, wood smoke. The heat is stifling, especially in summer. The slaves here sweat profusely, wiping their faces with rags. They are cooking a banquet for the master's guests. Dormice stuffed with pork and pine nuts, boiled ostrich, sow's udders in spicy sauce. The food is exotic, expensive, and prepared by people who will likely eat only a bowl of millet porridge at the end of the day. The contrast between the production and the consumption is absolute. Water is a constant need. If the house does not have a private pipe from the aqueduct, the water must be fetched. We see the water carriers leaving the house with large amphorae. They walk to the nearest public fountain. The fountain is a social hub for the slaves of the neighborhood. While they wait for their turn to fill the jars, they talk. They exchange gossip about their masters. Old Gaius is drinking too much again. The mistress is having an affair with the gladiator. This network of information is vast and fast. The slaves know everything. They are the invisible witnesses to every private moment. But they must carry the water back, balancing the heavy jars on their shoulders, step after step, back to the house where they become invisible again. Let us look at the pedisequi. These are the footmen. When the master or mistress leaves the house, they do not walk alone. That would be undignified and unsafe. They are surrounded by a retinue. The pedisequi walk behind and around them. They push the crowd aside. "Make way for the noble senator," they shout. They act as a physical buffer, a human shield. They carry the shopping, the messages, the cloak if it gets too hot. They spend their days walking, standing, waiting outside the baths, waiting outside the Senate house, waiting outside a friend's villa. They play dice in the dirt to pass the time. always keeping one eye on the door, ready to jump to attention the moment the master appears. There is a unique psychological aspect to this existence. The slave is physically present, but socially absent. They are in the room while the master discusses secret political plots. They are in the bedroom while the master sleeps. They are washing the body of the master in the bath. This proximity creates a strange intimacy. The master is naked before the slave, both literally and metaphorically. The slave sees the flaws, the fears, the sicknesses, yet the slave is expected to be as unresponsive as the furniture, to see but not see, to hear but not hear. However, trust does emerge. A master might rely heavily on a specific slave, a service colitis. This slave manages the accounts, negotiates with tenants, perhaps even runs a business on the master's behalf. He is given a peculium. This is a small amount of money or property that the slave is allowed to manage and keep, though legally it still belongs to the master. He might use this peculium to invest, to trade, and eventually to buy his own freedom. This is the carrot dangled in front of the donkey. The hope of manumission. The idea that if you work hard enough, save enough, and please the master enough, you might one day buy yourself back. It is a powerful motivator that keeps the system stable. It turns the slave into a participant in the economy of his own body. We see a slave counting coins in a small box hidden under his pallet. He counts them late at night by the light of a stolen candle stub. 3 denarii, 4 denarii. The price of freedom is thousands. It is a distant mountain, but he keeps climbing. He adds a coin he earned by doing a favor for a neighbor or a tip from a guest. This small box is his entire future. It represents the only agency he has. The sun sets on the first day in the house. The work slows down but does not stop. The lamps must be lit. Oil is poured into the clay lamps. Wicks are trimmed. The lucubrator places them around the house, creating pools of warm, yellow light. The master is dining. The slaves stand against the walls watching the cups. If a cup is empty, it is filled instantly. If food is dropped, it is swept up. The service must be seamless. Finally, the master retires. The doors are locked. The keys are returned to the steward. The slaves go to their quarters. The day is done. Felix lies on his straw mat. The stone walls of the cell are cool. He hears the breathing of the other men in the room. He closes his eyes. The memory of the market is already fading, replaced by the routine of the house. The bells, the orders, the silence. He is a cog in the machine now. The house breathes around him, a living entity that he serves. He sleeps, gathering strength for the exact same routine tomorrow. The cycle of the domus is a circle, turning endlessly, day after day, year after year. We leave the domestic sphere now, stepping out of the shadowed atrium and back into the blinding light of the Roman day. But this time, we are not looking at the private property of a senator. We are looking at the property of Rome itself. These are the servi publici, the public slaves. They do not serve a master. They serve the abstraction of the state. They are the gears in the municipal machine owned by the SPQR, the Senate and people of Rome. Their lives are often distinct from the household slaves we just observed. They often wear a tunic with a specific border or a metal badge that identifies their function. They walk with a different purpose. They are not fetching wine. They are maintaining the very skeleton of the city. Look towards the great arches of the Aqua Claudia, striding across the landscape like a stone giant. At the base of one of the pillars, we see a maintenance crew. These men are aquarii. Their entire existence is devoted to the water. They are responsible for the flow that keeps Rome alive. We see them mixing hydraulic cement, a pinkish paste made of lime and crushed pottery. They are patching a leak in the channel. One man is lowering himself into an inspection shaft. He carries a lamp and a scraper. His job is to crawl into the dark, wet tunnel of the Spicus, the water channel, and scrape away the calcareous deposits, the sintering that builds up over time and constricts the flow. Imagine the environment: pitch black, the water rushing past his legs, cold and relentless, the air damp and smelling of wet stone. He works in the dark for hours, the scraping sound echoing down the miles of tunnel. It is a lonely, essential task. Without him, the baths dry up, the fountains stop, and the city begins to die of thirst. Other public slaves are attached to the temples. They are the editui. They sweep the steps of the temple of Jupiter, polish the bronze statues, and guard the sacred treasures at night. They live within the precinct of the gods. Their lives are quiet, governed by the ritual calendar. They know the exact time to open the great doors in the morning so the sun hits the cult statue. They know how to clean the blood from the altar after a sacrifice. They are the janitors of the divine. Then there are the roads, the viae, the arteries of the empire. Road maintenance is an endless battle against nature. We see a gang of public slaves on the Via Appia. They are resetting a paving stone, a massive polygon of basalt. The stone has sunk into the mud after a heavy rain. They pry it up with iron bars, their muscles straining. They repack the foundation with gravel and sand, ramming it down with heavy wooden beetles. Thud, thud. The rhythm is slow and heavy. Then the stone is lowered back into place, fitting perfectly against its neighbors. The road must be flat. The legions must be able to march. These men ensure the speed of the Roman army with the sweat of their backs. We move further out now, leaving the city walls behind entirely. The noise of Rome fades into a dull hum on the horizon. We are entering the Agro Romano, the countryside. Here the scale of slavery shifts from the personal to the industrial. We are approaching a latifundium. A latifundium is a vast estate, a factory farm dedicated to a single cash crop: wine, oil, or grain. The landscape is a monoculture. Row upon row of olive trees stretch to the horizon, their silver-green leaves shimmering in the heat, or endless trellises of vines, heavy with grapes. There is no charm here, only production. The workforce here is the familia rustica. These are the men we saw in the market, with the broad shoulders and the white feet of the newly arrived. Their life is hard, brutal, and short. They do not live in the house with the master. The master is likely in Rome, enjoying the profits. They live in the ergastulum. This building stands apart from the villa. It is often sunken into the ground, a bunker of masonry. The windows are high, mere slits to let in air but prevent escape. This is where the slaves sleep. For the most dangerous or those prone to running, they sleep in chains. We can hear the clink of iron as they turn in their sleep. The bedding is straw on a stone floor. The sanitation is a bucket. It is a prison for the workforce. The figure of authority here is the villicus. He is a slave himself, but he has been promoted to manager. He answers only to the master. He holds the keys to the ergastulum. He determines the rations. He decides who gets whipped. His position is precarious. If the farm does not produce a profit, he is blamed. If the slaves revolt, he is the first to die. So he drives them hard. He is the buffer between the leisure of the owner and the sweat of the laborer. We see him walking the fields, holding a vine staff, the symbol of his power. He checks the pruning. He He checks the soil moisture. He is constantly calculating. Let us observe the olive harvest. It is late autumn. The wind is cold. The slaves are beating the trees with long poles to knock the olives down. Others are scrambling on the ground, gathering the fruit into baskets. The work is backbreaking, bending, lifting, carrying, from dawn until dusk. The baskets are heavy, filled with the black, oily fruit. They carry them to the torquillarium, the press room. This is a place of machinery. Huge stone mills, the trapedum, are used to crush the olives. The slaves push the heavy wooden bars that rotate the millstones, round and round, hour after hour. The friction of the stone, the smell of the crushed pulp, the physical exertion. It is a human engine driving a stone machine. The pulp is then placed in frails, woven mats, and stacked under the press. A massive wooden beam, the pralum, is winched down. The pressure builds. The oil and water weep out of the mats, running down into collecting vats. The air is thick with the smell of raw oil. The slaves working the winch are glistening with sweat and oil. It is a slippery, dangerous environment. A slip could mean a crushed limb. The villicus watches, ensuring the flow does not stop. This oil will light the lamps of Rome. It will be used in the baths. It will be cooked with. But here, it is just heavy labor. In the vineyards, the scene is similar, but the smell is different. The sweet, cloying scent of fermenting grapes. The slaves are treading the grapes in large vats. They march in place, knee-deep in the purple mash. It looks rhythmic, almost like a dance, but after 10 hours, the acid in the grapes stings the skin and the legs cramp. The wasps buzz around the sticky juice. There is no music, just the squelch of fruit and the heavy breathing of men. The isolation of the latifundia is total. These slaves might go years without seeing a town. Their world is the boundary of the estate. They are born here, they work here, and they are buried here in unmarked graves at the edge of the field. Their social structure is compressed. They form their own hierarchies, their own unwritten laws within the barracks. A man who can tell stories, a man who knows how to set a broken bone, a man who can interpret dreams. These men gain status in the dark hours of the night. But there is a fate worse than the fields, a fate that every slave fears. Damnatio ad metalla, condemnation to the mines. We travel now to the edges of the empire, to the mountains of Spain or the gold mines of Dacia. The landscape is scarred. Piles of tailings, rock waste, mar the hillsides. The trees have been stripped for timber to shore up the tunnels. The air tastes of sulfur and dust. The mines are the hungry maw of the Roman economy. Rome needs gold for coins, lead for pipes, iron for weapons, copper for bronze. The mines provide it, but they consume human lives to do so. The slaves here are often criminals, prisoners of war, or recalcitrant slaves sent here as punishment. To be sent to the mines is essentially a delayed death sentence. We descend into a shaft. It is narrow, barely wide enough for a man's shoulders. It drops vertically into the earth. The miners climb down notched logs, slippery with damp. Down, down, away from the sun. The temperature rises as they go deeper. The air becomes thin and foul. At the face of the lode, the work is performed in cramping spaces. Men lie on their sides or backs, hacking at the rock with picks. The space is so tight they cannot fully swing their arms. They must chip away at the quartz, inch by inch. The dust fills their lungs. Silicosis is a common killer here. The miners cough up black phlegm. They are essentially breathing stone. The lighting is provided by small clay lamps sitting in niches in the rock. The flame is tiny, a single point of yellow in the crushing blackness. If the lamp goes out, the darkness is absolute. The psychological terror of the dark, of the millions of tons of rock hanging above their heads, is constant. The timber props groan under the weight. Collapses are frequent. A rumble, a crack, and then silence. No rescue party comes. The shaft is simply sealed, and a new one is dug. Boys are often used in the mines as well. They are small enough to crawl into the narrowest veins, the rat holes, to retrieve the ore that the men chip loose. They drag baskets of rock behind them, crawling on hands and knees through tunnels no wider than a sewer pipe. They emerge at the surface, blinking, covered in gray dust, their eyes looking huge and white in their blackened faces. They dump the rock and turn back to the hole. The processing of the ore is equally brutal. The rock must be crushed, washed, and smelted. The smelting furnaces burn day and night. The fumes are toxic. Lead smelting releases lead vapor. Mercury mining releases mercury vapor. The slaves working the furnaces slowly go mad, or their bodies simply shut down from heavy metal poisoning. Their teeth fall out. Their limbs shake. It is a slow chemical disintegration of the human form. And yet, the silver flows. It is cast into ingots, stamped with the imperial seal, and shipped to Rome to be minted into denarii. The coin that buys the bread, that pays the soldier, that builds the temple, begins its life in this dark, suffocating hole, chipped out by a man who will never see the sun again. Let us return to the surface, to the light, but let us stay with the concept of the public infrastructure. We look at the cloacarii, the workers of the sewers. Rome's Cloaca Maxima is a marvel of engineering, a massive underground river of waste. Someone has to keep it clear. These slaves work in the bowels of the city. They wade through the filth, clearing blockages, repairing the brickwork. It is a job of immense squalor. The methane gas can be suffocating. The rats are everywhere. But it is also a place of strange freedom. Down here, beneath the streets, no overseer likes to follow. There is a subculture of the underground, a network of tunnels where runaways might hide for a time, living in the darkness to escape the light of the auction block. The spectrum of labor we have observed, from the specialized, almost pampered life of the nomenclator in the atrium to the short, brutal existence of the miner, illustrates the complexity of the system. It is not a monolith. It is a vast, tiered pyramid of exploitation. As the sun sets over the latifundium, the villicus blows a horn. The work in the fields stops. The slaves straighten their backs, groaning. They form a line, shuffling back towards the ergastulum. The sky is a brilliant orange, silhouetting the olive trees. It is a scene of pastoral beauty, but for the men in the line, it just means the day is over, and they have survived. They are counted as they enter the barracks. 1, 2, 3. The door is barred. The lock clicks shut. The world of the free is closed off to them for another night. In the city, the vigils are beginning their patrol. They are accompanied by their own public slaves, who carry the buckets and the axes in case of fire. They walk the darkening streets, their torches casting long shadows. They pass the slave markets, now empty and silent. The platforms are bare. The cycle waits for the dawn to begin again. We watch the torchlight fade around a corner, leaving the street in darkness. We return now to the city center, but we are moving away from the noise of the streets and into the quiet, dust-mote-filled air of a private library within a senator's villa. The morning light filters through thin sheets of translucent alabaster that serve as window panes, creating a soft, diffused glow. Here, we encounter the intellectual elite of the enslaved population. These are the servi literati, the educated slaves. Their world is not one of heavy stones and whips, but of papyrus, ink, and silence. In the corner of the room, sitting at a small wooden desk, is a copyist. He is likely Greek, perhaps from Alexandria or Athens. His value is immense, far exceeding that of a field hand. His job is to preserve knowledge. He is transcribing a philosophical text, perhaps a treatise by Cicero or a history by Livy. Watch his hand. It moves with a steady, fluid precision. He dips his reed pen, the calamus, into an inkwell made of bronze. The ink, atramentum, is a mixture of soot, gum, and water. It smells faintly of burnt wood. He writes on a roll of papyrus. The texture of the plant fibers is visible, a grid of horizontal and vertical strips pressed together. The copyist must be careful. Papyrus is expensive. A mistake cannot be easily erased. He writes column after column, his eyes moving back and forth between the original text and his copy. The room is silent, except for the faint scratching of the reed on the fibers. This is the analog printing press of the ancient world. Every book in every library in Rome exists because a hand like this wrote it out, letter by letter, line by line. Nearby stands the librarius, the librarian. He is responsible for the organization of the scrolls. They are stored in wooden cubbyholes called needy. Each scroll has a small tag, a syllabos, hanging from the end, identifying the work. The librarian moves softly, checking the tags, ensuring the scrolls are free of moisture and worms. He knows the location of every text. If the master wants to read Virgil, the librarian must produce it instantly. His mind is a catalog. He lives his life surrounded by the thoughts of dead men, a custodian of culture who owns none of it. Let us step out of the library and observe a different kind of educational relationship. We see a young Roman boy, perhaps 7 years old, walking out of the front door. Walking beside him, holding his hand or carrying his satchel, is an older man. This is the pedagogus. The pedagogus is not a teacher in the modern sense, but a chaperone and a moral guide. His duty is to escort the boy to school, to protect him from the dangers of the street, and to ensure he behaves with the dignity of a future citizen. It is a strange dynamic. The man is property, yet he has authority over the freeborn child. He can scold him. He can tell him to stand up straight. He teaches him manners. "Do not gawk at the beggars," he might whisper. "Walk with purpose." They arrive at the school, which is often just a rented room or a space separated from the street by a curtain. The teacher, the ludi magister, is also often a freedman or a slave. The furniture is simple: backless stools for the students, a chair with a back for the teacher. The pedagogus waits at the back of the room while the lesson proceeds. He sits quietly, perhaps dozing, perhaps listening to the recitation of the alphabet. A, B, C. The drone of the children's voices is hypnotic. The pedagogus has heard this 1,000 times. He watches his charge, a constant silent guardian. He is the shadow that ensures the safety of the dynasty. Consider the tiro. This term refers to a novice soldier, but also to a specific type of secretary, named after Marcus Tullius Tiro, the slave and later freedman of Cicero. Tiro invented a system of shorthand, Tironian notes, which allowed him to transcribe speeches in real time. We can imagine a secretary sitting in the Senate House, a wax tablet balanced on his knee. The senators are debating, their voices rising and falling. The secretary's hand flies across the wax. He does not write words. He writes symbols: a dash for Rome, a hook for consul, a dot for meeting. He is capturing history as it happens. The concentration required is absolute. He cannot miss a phrase. Later, he will return to the quiet of the study and transcribe these symbols into full Latin text on papyrus. These men are the invisible hard drives of the Roman administration. They hold the secrets of the state, the private letters of the powerful, the details of illicit affairs. Their silence is their most valuable attribute. A loose-tongued secretary is useless and dangerous. Let us move to the commercial districts, the Subura, or the Velabrum. Here, we see slaves operating in a very different capacity. We see a shop, a taberna, opening onto the street. It sells pottery, or perhaps leather goods. The man behind the counter, haggling with a customer, looks like a shopkeeper. He acts like a shopkeeper, but he is a slave. He is an instator, a business manager. The master, a wealthy equestrian, owns the shop but considers retail trade beneath his dignity. So, he installs a trusted slave to run it. The slave manages the inventory, deals with suppliers, keeps the accounts, and handles the cash. This is where the concept of the peculium becomes crucial. The peculium is the slave's working capital. Technically, the shop and the money belong to the master. But in practice, the slave operates it as his own. If the shop is profitable, the slave is allowed to keep a portion of the earnings in his peculium. This arrangement benefits both. The master gets a passive income stream without the social stigma of being a merchant. The slave gets a degree of autonomy and the chance to earn the money to buy his freedom. We see the instator counting the day's receipts. He separates the coins, a pile for the master, a smaller pile for his own box. He is motivated. He smiles at customers. He upsells the merchandise. He is an entrepreneur in chains. Sometimes this extends to high-level finance. There are slaves who act as bankers, argentarii. They manage loans, exchange currency, and hold deposits. They sit at tables in the forum, their fingers stained with ink, manipulating the flow of capital. Free citizens come to them to borrow money. Imagine the social complexity. A free citizen, perhaps a man of old family but fallen fortunes, asking a slave for a loan. The slave has the economic power, but the citizen has the legal personhood. They transact with a polite, professional distance, the social contradiction hovering in the air between them. Let us look at the medical profession. In Rome, medicine is often the domain of the Greeks, and many doctors are slaves or freedmen, the medicus. We enter a small room in a villa designated as the infirmary, or valetudinarium. The smell is distinct: vinegar, boiling herbs, unwashed linen. A slave doctor is tending to the master's gout. He mixes a poultice in a bowl. He knows the properties of willow bark, of poppy, of garlic. The level of trust here is extraordinary. The master allows this man, whom he could have whipped for dropping a plate, to hold a scalpel to his skin. He drinks the potions the slave prepares. If the master dies under suspicious circumstances, the doctor is the first suspect and will be tortured and executed. So the doctor is highly motivated to keep the master alive. We watch him gently bandaging a wound. His hands are skilled, sensitive. He speaks softly, reassuring the patient. "It will heal, Dominus. Rest now." In this room, the hierarchy is subtly inverted. The sick master is dependent on the knowledge and skill of the property. Now, let's shift our gaze to the personal lives of the enslaved, specifically the concept of family. In Roman law, a slave cannot marry. Marriage, connubium, is a right reserved for citizens. However, human nature cannot be legislated away. Slaves form couples. They fall in love. They have children. This relationship is known as contubernium. It is recognized by custom, but not by law. We are back in the slave quarters of the villa. It is evening. We see a man and a woman sitting together on a bench. They are sharing a bowl of food. They are a couple. They might have been together for years. They might call each other husband and wife in the privacy of this room, using the terms contubernalis. But they live with a constant, terrifying fragility. At any moment, the master can decide to sell one of them. If the master needs money, or if he is displeased, he can sell the man to a farm in Sicily and keep the woman in Rome. There is no divorce court, no appeal. The separation is instant and final. We can imagine the quiet anxiety that underlines their relationship. Every time the master calls one of them, there is a moment of fear. Is this it? Is this the day we are torn apart? And then there are the children, the Vernet. We see a toddler playing on the floor of the quarters. He belongs to the master, not to the parents. The legal principle is partus sequitur ventrum. The child follows the womb. If the mother is a slave, the child is a slave, regardless of who the father is. The father could be a fellow slave, a free man, or even the master himself. It makes no legal difference. The parents raise the child, love the child, but they do not own the child. They know that as soon as the boy is old enough to work, he might be sent away, or given as a gift to a friend, or sold. Imagine the parenting in this context. You must teach your child to be obedient, to be invisible, because that is how they will survive. You cannot teach them to be proud or independent, for those traits are dangerous. You watch them grow with a mix of pride and dread. We might see a nutrix, a wet nurse. She is a slave woman who has recently given birth. She is assigned to breastfeed the master's newborn baby. She holds the Roman infant to her breast, nourishing the future master. Her own child might be given to another slave to feed, or perhaps has died. The bond she forms with the master's child is deep and complex. She often becomes a mother figure to him, a source of comfort that his own aristocratic mother, distant and busy with social duties, is not. Years later, when the boy is a man, he might protect his old nurse, giving her a pension or freeing her. It is a relationship of milk and affection that transcends the legal barrier. The religious life of slaves is another layer of their existence. While they are excluded from many of the state cults of Rome, they have their own gods. They worship the lares, the household gods. In the kitchen or the pantry, there is often a small shrine, a lararium, a painting of a snake or small figurines. The slaves place offerings here, a piece of spelt cake, a few grapes, a garland of flowers. They pray for protection, for health, for a kind master. They also gravitate towards foreign cults that offer more hope or equality. The cult of Isis, the cult of Mithras. In these temples, the hierarchy of the world is sometimes suspended. A slave can rise to a high rank within the mystery religion, outranking a free man in the spiritual order. We might see a slave sneaking out at night to attend a meeting of a burial club, a collegium. These were associations where members paid a small monthly fee to ensure that when they died, they would have a proper funeral and a decent burial. The fear of being thrown into a common pit, nameless and forgotten, is strong. The collegium offers the dignity of a marked grave and a memorial feast. It is a way of claiming humanity in the face of a system that denies it. Let us return to the domus. For the evening meal preparation, the triclinium, the dining room, is being readied. The slaves are arranging the 3 couches in a U-shape. They smooth the cushions. They set up the sideboards with silver vessels. The nomenculator is reviewing the guest list. The archimagirus, the head chef, is inspecting the platters before they leave the kitchen. This is a theater production. The slaves are the stagehands and the extras. They must move silently. They must anticipate needs before they are voiced. A good waiter knows the master wants wine before the master knows it himself. They communicate with hand signals, a raised finger, a nod, to avoid breaking the conversation of the guests. During the meal, the guests might discuss politics, philosophy, or poetry. The slaves standing against the wall hear it all. They receive an education by osmosis. A bright young slave might learn history simply by listening to the senator drone on about his ancestors. He might learn geography by hearing a merchant describe his travels. This passive acquisition of knowledge creates a class of slaves who are often more cultured than the lower-class free citizens in the taverns. They are trapped in the center of civilization, soaked in it, yet barred from participating in it. As the dinner ends and the guests depart, the cleanup begins. This is the back-of-house reality. The scraps of food, the half-eaten bread, the bones, are collected. These leftovers often form the slave's own dinner. They eat what the masters leave. It is a direct caloric trickle-down. In the quiet of the late night, after the work is done, we might witness a moment of literacy and resistance. A slave pulls a scrap of papyrus from his tunic, a piece salvaged from the waste bin in the library. He practices his letters by the light of the kitchen fire. He writes his name, not the name the master gave him, but his true name. He writes the name of his village. It is a small, private act of reclamation. He hides the scrap in a crack in the wall, a secret archive of one. The moon is high over Rome now. The intellectual and commercial engines of the city have spun down. The copyist rubs his tired eyes. The shopkeeper locks the heavy wooden shutters of the taberna. The doctor washes his hands. The pedagogist sleeps at the foot of the boy's bed. The city sleeps, but the complex web of relationships, economic, emotional, legal, that binds the owner and the owned remains taut, waiting for the sun to rise and pull it tight once again. Time moves forward, relentless as the Tiber. We have looked at the beginning of the slave's journey in the market and the middle years of labor in the house or field. Now we must look at the end, the depreciation of the human asset. In the Roman accounting mindset, a slave is an investment that yields a return over time. But like any tool, a plow, an ox, a millstone, the body eventually wears out. Consider the aging slave, the senex. We see an old man sitting on a bench in the sun, in the courtyard of a villa. His hair is white. His back is bent from decades of carrying loads. His hands are gnarled with arthritis, the joints swollen and stiff. He was once a strong field hand, or perhaps a swift runner who carried messages. Now, he is slow. He drops things. His eyesight is failing. In a strict economic calculation, he is now a liability. He consumes food, but produces little work. The Roman writer Cato the Elder, in his manual on farming, gave chillingly practical advice on this matter. He recommended selling off old oxen, worn-out iron tools, and aged or sick slaves. Sell the old slave, the sickly slave, and anything else that is superfluous. It is a brutal efficiency. The market for old slaves is non-existent, so selling often meant selling them for pennies to anyone who might squeeze a final few months of labor out of them, or simply turning them out. We see the gate of the villa opening. The old man is given a small bundle, a loaf of bread, a cloak. He is told to leave. There is no pension. There is no retirement home. If he has not saved enough peculium to support himself, or if he has no family to take him in, he becomes a beggar. He joins the ranks of the destitute who sleep under the porticos of the public buildings, holding out a hand for a copper coin from the passers-by. He becomes part of the urban background, a heap of rags in a doorway. There is a darker fate for the sick. In the middle of the Tiber River lies the Tiber Island, shaped like a ship. It is home to the temple of Aesculapius, the god of healing. It was a common practice for some masters to take their sick and dying slaves to this island and leave them there. If they recovered, it was a miracle of the god. If they died, the master was spared the cost of burial. It was a convenient dumping ground. Imagine the scene on the island. The steps of the temple are crowded with the discarded, men wasting away from fever, women with broken limbs that never healed right. The priests of Aesculapius move among them, offering water and perhaps some herbal remedies, but the mortality rate is high. The island is a quarantine zone of misery, hidden in plain sight in the middle of the river. It got so bad that the Emperor Claudius eventually passed a law. Any slave abandoned on the island who recovered would be automatically free. The master lost his property rights by the act of abandonment. It was one of the few legal protections, born not out of kindness, but out of a need to control the public nuisance of dying bodies. But let us look at the good death, the death of a favored household slave. We descend into a columbarium. This is an underground tomb, often communal. We walk down a flight of steep stairs into a cool, rectangular chamber. The walls are lined with rows and rows of small niches, like the nesting boxes of doves, hence the name columbarium. In each niche sits a small clay urn or a glass jar containing the ashes of the deceased. Below each niche is a small marble plaque. We can read the inscriptions. They are simple, poignant. To Eros, a faithful servant, lived 30 years. To Prima, a beloved nurse. The Collegium, we mentioned earlier, has paid for this. The members come here on the anniversary of the death, the parentalia. They bring lamps. They pour libations of wine and oil into the small holes in the urns. They eat a meal together in the tomb. It is a quiet, respectful space. The air smells of damp earth and burnt oil. Here, in death, the slave achieves a permanence that was denied to him in life. His name is carved in stone. He has a place. He is not just a line in a ledger. He is remembered by his peers. The columbarium is a city of the dead that mirrors the hierarchy of the living, but with a sense of community that the harsh world above often lacks. Now, let us turn to the light, the possibility of escape, not by running, but by law. Manumissio, the act of sending a slave forth from the hand of the master. It is the defining hope of the enslaved population. There are several ways this can happen. The most informal is manumissio inter amicos. The master simply declares, in the presence of witnesses, "You are free." Or he invites the slave to recline at the dinner table with him. It is a powerful gesture, but legally weak. The slave is free in practice, but if the master changes his mind, the law might not protect him. The formal, ironclad method happens before a magistrate. We are back in the forum. A small group approaches the tribunal of the praetor, the master, the slave, and a third party known as the adsertor libertatis. The adsertor touches the slave with a rod, called the vindicta, and declares, "I assert that this man is free." The master does not contradict him. He stays silent. This is a legal fiction, a scripted play. The master then takes the slave by the hand, turns him around in a circle, symbolizing the ability to move in any direction he chooses, and then gives him a light slap on the cheek. This is the last physical indignity he will suffer as a slave. The magistrate pronounces him free. His name is entered into the records. He is no longer a res, he is a persona. The transformation is immediate. He shaves his head. He puts on the pileus, a conical felt cap that is the badge of liberty. He puts on a toga, not the splendid toga of a senator, but a toga nonetheless. He is now a Roman citizen. Think about the magnitude of this. Rome was unique among ancient societies in its willingness to absorb its slaves into the citizenry. A man born a barbarian in Gaul could, in one ceremony, become a citizen of the empire that conquered him. But he is not free in the modern sense. He is a libertus, a freedman. He is forever marked by his past. He carries the stain of slavery, the macula servitudis. He cannot hold high political office. He cannot be a priest in the major colleges, and crucially, he still owes a duty to his former master, who is now his patronus. This relationship is legally defined as obsequium and officium. The freedman cannot sue his patron. He must provide a certain number of days of work each year. Opera. He might still manage the master's shop or handle his accounts, but now he does it as a junior partner, not a possession. If the freedman dies without children, his property reverts to the patron. The invisible cord is stretched, but not cut. We see the daily ritual of the salutatio. It is dawn. The streets are filling up. We see a crowd gathering outside the door of a wealthy senator's house. These are his clients, and many of them are his former slaves. They are wearing their togas, but the fabric is cheap, perhaps a bit yellowed. They wait for the door to open. They file in one by one to greet the patron in the atrium. Ave Parone. They are there to pay their respects, to receive orders, and to receive the sportula. The sportula was originally a small basket of food, but later became a small cash handout. It is a daily allowance. For many freedmen, this is their primary income. They are dependent on the patron's generosity. In return, they form his entourage. When he walks to the forum, they surround him. A man with a large crowd of clients is seen as powerful. The freedmen are his political applause track. However, some freedmen rise far above this dependency. We enter the world of the nouveau riche. The commercial instincts that served a slave well, the hustle, the ability to negotiate, the lack of aristocratic squeamishness about trade, make some freedmen incredibly wealthy. The aristocracy looks down on making money from anything other than land. The freedmen have no such inhibitions. They bake the bread. They dye the wool. They import the wine. They run the brothels. We visit the house of a wealthy freedman. It is gaudy. The decorations are too much gold leaf, too much bright purple. He is trying to buy the class he was not born into. He wears a ring that is too big. He speaks with a loud voice, perhaps still carrying the accent of his homeland. He hosts lavish dinner parties. He serves expensive wine, but he mispronounces the vintage. The freeborn guests eat his food and drink his wine, but behind his back they sneer. They call him a son of the earth, a man without a father. Yet his children, and this is the key, his children will be freeborn. Ingenui. The stain washes out in one generation. The son of the freedman can run for office. The grandson could be a senator. The great-grandson could be emperor. This is the long game of the Roman slave system. It is a brutal grinder, but for the survivors, there is an elevator to the top. Let's examine the imperial freedmen. These are the former slaves of the emperor himself. They are the most powerful men in the world, despite their technical social inferiority. We walk through the corridors of the imperial palace on the Palatine Hill. We see a man named Pallas, or Narcissus. He walks with a retinue of scribes. Senators bow to him. Why? Because he controls the emperor's schedule. He controls access. He manages the treasury, the fiscus. He is the chief of staff. A senator might have a pedigree going back 500 years, but if he wants a governorship, he has to wait in the animate room of a former slave. These imperial freedmen amass fortunes that dwarf the old aristocracy. They build massive villas, commission statues, and manipulate the politics of the empire from the shadows. They are the ultimate proof that in Rome, power is not always where the law says it should be. But let's return to the average freedman. We see him opening a small shop of his own, a bakery. He has saved his peculium, bought his freedom, and now rents a space. He hires a few slaves of his own. He works them hard, perhaps harder than he was worked, because he knows the cost of every loaf. He marries a freedwoman. They have a child. They look at the baby in the cradle. This baby will never know the auction block. This baby will never wear a collar. The father's hands are scarred from the millstone, but the baby's hands are soft. This is the victory. The psychological transition is complex. A man who has spent 30 years obeying orders does not suddenly learn how to make decisions. We see a newly freed man standing at a crossroads in the city. He looks left, he looks right. For the first time, no one is telling him which way to go. It is exhilarating, but also paralyzing. The structure of his life has collapsed. He has to build a new one from scratch. He has to learn how to be a citizen, how to vote in the assembly, how to navigate the legal system as a plaintiff, not property. He joins a guild, a collegium of his trade. The Guild of Bakers, or the Guild of Smiths. Here he finds a new brotherhood. They meet for dinners. They elect officers. It is a mimicry of the state government. He can be a magistrate of the Bakers' Guild. He can wear a sash and sit at the head of the table. It satisfies the need for status, for recognition. We see him at the theater. He cannot sit in the front rows with the senators, nor the next rows with the knights. He sits further back, in the section reserved for citizens wearing togas. But he is not in the very back, where the slaves and the poor sit. He is in the middle. He looks down at the slaves standing in the aisles and feels the distance he has traveled. He looks up at the senators and feels the distance he can never cross. He is suspended in the middle of Roman society, the connective tissue that holds the economy together.
As the sun sets on the city, the freedman closes his shop. He locks the door with his own key. He walks to his own apartment, modest, perhaps a walk-up on the 3rd floor of an insula, but his own. He eats dinner with his wife. They speak Latin, perhaps with mistakes, but they speak it freely. They pour a libation to the lares, but they also pour one to the genius of the emperor, the ultimate guarantor of the system that allowed them to rise. The lamp flickers. The day is done. The freedman sleeps. He might dream of the market, of the cold stone and the dealer's voice, and wake up sweating. But then he sees the pileless cap resting on the stool next to his bed. He touches it. It is real. He lies back down. The nightmare is behind him. The future belongs to his son. The cycle continues. In the dark of the night, ships are still sailing from the east, carrying new captives to fill the spaces left by those who died or were freed. The machine never stops. But for this one man, the gears have ground to a halt, and he has stepped off. We shift our focus now from the city streets to a distinct, enclosed world on the outskirts of Rome, often near the great amphitheaters. We stand before the high, windowless walls of a ludus, a gladiator school. Specifically, let us imagine the Ludus Magnus, the primary training ground that sits in the shadow of the Colosseum. The sounds here are different. There is no chaotic babble of the market. Instead, there is a rhythmic, percussive consistency. The strike of wood against wood, the grunt of exertion, the heavy thud of bodies hitting the sand. We enter through the main gate, passing the guards who are posted not to keep people out, but to keep the investments in. Inside, the architecture is military in its precision. A central courtyard, open to the sky and covered in sand, is surrounded by a 2-story colonnade. Behind the columns lie the cells, the armory, the kitchen, and the infirmary. This is a factory of violence, but the daily operation is a grind of discipline and repetition. The man in charge is the lanista. We see him standing on the balcony of the second floor, looking down at the training ground. He is a controversial figure in Roman society. He is wealthy, often richer than the senators who hire him, but he is socially unclean, infamous. He trades in blood. He owns the bodies of these men, and he rents them out for the games. He is a flesh merchant of a specialized variety. He wears a tunic of fine wool, but his face is hard, etched with the stress of managing volatile assets. He calculates the caloric intake of his fighters against the rental price he can demand for the next festival. Down in the courtyard, the training is underway. It is not the chaotic brawling of the arena. It is a slow, methodical drill. The gladiators, the Familia Gladiatoria, are practicing with the palace. This is a heavy wooden post sunk deep into the ground. It stands about 6 feet high. The men are not using sharp steel weapons. They are using the rudis, a wooden sword that is often weighted with lead to be twice as heavy as a real blade. They also carry wicker shields, also weighted. Watch the movement. A trainer, the Dr. A, often a retired gladiator with scars mapping his history, calls out the numbers. 1. The line of men steps forward, shields raised. 2. They strike the post at a specific angle, the flank, the head, the leg. 3. They recover to a defensive stance. It is done in unison, over and over again. The sweat pours off them, turning the dust on their skin into mud. The goal is to build muscle memory so deep that in the chaos of the arena, the body moves without thinking. Let us look at the men themselves. They are a motley collection. Prisoners of war with the tattoos of Thrace or Germany still visible. Criminals condemned to the school. But also, surprisingly, volunteers. The Octorati. These are free Roman citizens who have fallen into debt or disgrace, or who simply crave the brutal structure of this life. They have signed a contract, the Octoramentum, selling themselves into slavery for a set period. In doing so, they have surrendered their rights. They have agreed to be burned, bound, beaten, and killed by the sword. We see an Octoratus standing next to a captive from Gaul. In the sand of the ludus, their social status is erased. They are only as good as their shield arm. The diet of these men is specific and, to the modern palate, unappealing. They are known as hordeari, the barley men. We visit the kitchen. Huge cauldrons are bubbling. The smell is thick and earthy. The cooks are preparing a mash of boiled barley and beans. It is heavy, dense food, designed to pack en masse. The Romans believed that a layer of subcutaneous fat was essential for a gladiator. It protected the vital organs and nerves from superficial cuts. A gladiator who is too lean is fragile. The fat allows for a shallow cut to bleed spectacularly without ending the fight. Into this porridge, the cook adds a special supplement, bone ash, rich in calcium. The Romans knew, through observation, that this strengthened the bones. These men take heavy blows. They need skeletons of iron. The gladiators line up with their wooden bowls. They eat in silence, shoveling the beige mash into their mouths. It is fuel. There is no wine here, only water or perhaps a vinegar-based drink called posca to replenish electrolytes. We move to the armory, the armamentarium. The smell here is leather, oil, and iron. An armorer is working at a bench. He is polishing a helmet, a galea. It is a heavy bronze piece with a broad brim and a face visor that turns the wearer into a faceless statue. He rubs the metal with a rag soaked in olive oil and pumice dust until it gleams. He checks the leather straps inside. A broken strap could mean a helmet shifting blindly in combat, leading to death. Rows of equipment line the walls. The manica, the segmented arm guard made of leather or metal strips. The ochrea, the greaves for the legs. The tridents, the nets, the short stabbing swords, the curved sylvan blades. Every item is numbered and assigned. The organization is absolute. A missing dagger is a security threat. The armorer accounts for every inch of steel at the end of the day. The medical care in the ludus is surprisingly advanced. The lanista protects his investment. A highly skilled doctor is on staff. We see the massage room. After training, the gladiators lie on wooden tables. Slaves rub their muscles with oil, working out the knots and strains. The doctor inspects a cut on a man's shoulder. He cleans it with wine and honey, then stitches it with a bone needle. He applies a salve. If a gladiator has a fever, he is isolated and treated with the best herbs available. A dead gladiator in the training phase is a total financial loss. Let us examine the hierarchy within the barracks. The cells are small, often shared by 2 men. In the evening, after the training and the meal, the men sit in their cells. They are divided by their fighting style. The murmurillo, with his heavy shield and fish-crested helmet, tends to bond with other heavy fighters. The retiarius, the net fighter who wears almost no armor, is often looked down upon by the heavily armored classes as effeminate or tricky, yet they must rely on each other. There is a ranking system. The primus palus is the top fighter of the school. He gets the best food, the best cell, perhaps even a private servant. He is the alpha male of the pack. The others look up to him or plot to replace him. We can imagine the quiet conversations in the dark cells. They discuss the techniques of a rival school. They talk about the odds. They gamble with dice made of bone. They form syndicates, pooling their small amounts of money to ensure that if one dies, the others will pay for a proper burial or send money to his family. The ludus is also a place of confinement. The windows of the outer walls are high slits. Guards patrol the perimeter. But inside, there is a strange freedom in the acceptance of fate. These men know they are already dead in the eyes of the law. This creates a nihilistic camaraderie. We see a man carving a small wooden figure. Another is sharpening a piece of slate. They are finding ways to pass the time between the bouts of extreme exertion. Occasionally, a wealthy patron visits the ludus. A senator giving a game for his daughter's wedding wants to inspect the merchandise. The lanista leads him through the courtyard. The gladiators are ordered to stand at attention. The senator walks down the line, poking a chest with his cane, asking about a scar. "This one looks sullen," he remarks. "He has a fire in him." The lanista counters smoothly. "He will fight well." The gladiator stares straight ahead, his face a mask. He is being shopped for like a prize bull. Let us consider the venatores, the hunters. They are a separate category, often housed in a different wing. Their training is different. They do not fight men. They fight beasts. In their part of the courtyard, we might see a mock-up of a tiger made of straw and wood on wheels. They practice the spear thrust, the dodge. The smell in their quarters is wilder, the scent of the animal cages that are sometimes kept nearby for acclimatization. They learn the behavior of lions, bears, and leopards. They are the matadors of the ancient world. The night falls over the ludus. The gates are barred from the outside. The lamps are extinguished. The silence returns. But it is a heavy silence. In the cells, men are sleeping the deep sleep of physical exhaustion. Some dream of the arena, of the roar of the crowd, which is both their drug and their executioner.
Others dream of the homes they were taken from, the forests of Germany, the deserts of Numidia, but we must not romanticize it. It is a prison. The sanitation is communal. A trench with water running through it serves as the latrine. The privacy is non-existent. The discipline is brutal. A man who refuses to train is whipped. A man who tries to escape is branded or put in shackles. The family of the gladiators is held together by fear and mutual survival. We leave the ludus and travel back into the domestic heart of the city to observe a very different, yet equally restricted life, that of the ancilli, the female slaves. We touched on them briefly, but their world deserves closer inspection. It is a world of interiors. The life of a female house slave is defined by the rhythm of the matron, the mistress of the house. We enter the cubiculum of the mistress in the morning. It is still dark. The slave girl, perhaps named Lalage or Chloe, rises from her mat on the floor at the foot of the bed. She must be silent. She prepares the basin of water, the towels, the combs. When the mistress wakes, the ornatrix begins her work. This is the hairdresser. Roman hairstyles are incredibly complex. Stacks of curls, braids, and buns, often reinforced with false hair. The ornatrix stands behind the chair for hours. Her fingers must be nimble. She holds the curling iron, the calamistrum, which has been heated in hot ashes. If it is too hot, it singes the hair. If it is too cold, the curl does not hold. The smell of singed hair is a constant anxiety. The mistress holds a mirror of polished bronze. She watches every move. If a pin scratches her or a curl is out of place, the reaction can be swift, a slap or a stab with the hairpin. The ornatrix must absorb this without flinching. Her face must remain impassive. She is a mirror herself, reflecting only what the mistress wants to see. We see the wardrobe slaves unfolding the tunics and stolas. The fabric is delicate. Silk from the East, fine cotton from Egypt. They must be smoothed of wrinkles. The ancillae help the mistress dress, adjusting the folds, tying the belt. It is an intimate ritual. They see the aging body of the mistress, the sagging skin, the hidden blemishes. They apply the cosmetics, white lead for the face, red ochre for the lips, soot for the eyes. They are constructing the public mask of the Roman woman. Beyond the bedroom, the female slaves run the internal logistics of the house. We see the wet nurses we mentioned before, but also the pedisique, the attendants. When the mistress goes to the baths, a retinue follows her. They carry her oils, her strigil, her towels, her sandals. At the public baths, the slave girl stands in the steam, waiting. She washes her mistress, scrapes the oil and dirt from her skin, dries her, dresses her. She is a phantom limb, performing the tasks the mistress is too refined to do herself. There is a vulnerability here that is distinct. The ancilla is always available. She has no lock on her door. The master, the master's sons, or the male slaves can enter her space. Her body is property. This pervasive threat creates an atmosphere of guardedness. We see the women moving in pairs when possible, a subtle strategy of mutual protection. They whisper in the corridors, sharing information about which men to avoid, which moods the master is in. Yet, there is also power in their position. They control the secrets. They know who the mistress is sending letters to. They know who visits when the master is away. The ancilla who delivers the secret note is a gatekeeper. She can be bribed. She can be loyal. This gives her leverage. A smart slave woman can navigate the intrigues of the household to secure better treatment, gifts, or even freedom. We see a young slave girl learning to weave. An older woman is teaching her.
The loom is the constant background noise of the women's quarters. The older woman guides the girl's hands. "Not so tight," she whispers. "Let the thread breathe." This transmission of skill is also a transmission of culture. They sing songs as they work, songs in their native tongues that the master does not understand. It is a sonic space where they can be themselves, hidden in plain sight by the language barrier. Let us look at the spinning of the thread. The distaff is held in the left hand, the wool wound around it. The right hand pulls the fibers, twisting them, spinning the spindle. It is a motion that has been performed by women for 10,000 years. In the Roman household, it is the symbol of virtue, but for the slave, it is a quota. She must produce a certain weight of thread per day. We see her weighing her output on a small scale at the end of the shift. If it is light, she stays up late, working by the dim lamp, her eyes straining, her fingers raw. The laundry is another domain. Urine was the primary cleaning agent for whitening togas. The smell in the laundry room is acrid. The slave women tread the cloth in vats or scrub it with fuller's earth. It is hard, chemical work. Their hands are chapped, their skin rough. They wash the stains of wine and food from the master's feasts, scrubbing away the evidence of a luxury they do not share. As evening comes to the women's quarters, the dynamic shifts. The work is done. They braid each other's hair, not in the elaborate styles of the mistress, but in simple, practical plaits. They share stories. They are a sisterhood of circumstance. We see a woman mending a tear in her own tunic. She does it with care. It is the only thing she owns. We step back out into the atrium. The house is quiet. The janitor is asleep at his post. The lanista in the gladiator school is tallying his accounts. The hordeari are digesting their barley. The city is a collection of these enclosed cells, these pockets of lives lived under the weight of ownership. The moon moves across the sky, marking the passage of time. Tomorrow, the cycle repeats. The rudis will strike the post. The curling iron will heat in the ash. The millstone will turn. But for now, in the stillness, the distinctions blur. A sleeping gladiator looks much like a sleeping senator. It is only when they wake that the walls rise up again. And so, the great wheel of the Roman day finally comes to a halt. The noise has stopped. The shouting of the market, the creak of the ox carts, the hammer of the smith, and the chant of the priest have all been swallowed by the silence. The city of Rome, the urbs aeterna, has succumbed to the weight of the night. We drift through these sleeping spaces one last time. In the atrium, the water in the pool is a flat black mirror, undisturbed by any ripple. The tools of labor are resting. The broom is in the corner. The sponge is dry. The heavy iron keys hang on a hook. There is a profound peace in seeing these objects of toil lying dormant. In the dark, they have lost their power to command. The generation we have watched today, the fresh arrivals at the port, the workers in the fields, the keepers of the house, they are all at rest now. Their labor is finished. The history books may record the wars and the emperors, but we have witnessed the quiet, underlying hum of their daily lives. And now, that hum has faded into a whisper, and then into silence. The walls around you are your own. The door is locked by your own hand. The bed is soft. The air is still. The echoes of the past are just whispers now, gentle and fading. They are not ghosts to be feared, but ancestors to be acknowledged. They have carried the weight so that we could stand here and look back. But now, it is time to let the dust settle back over the ruins. Let the mango close his ledger. Let the villicus put down his staff.
Let the gladiator lower his sword. The day is done. The long work is over. The history is written, and it cannot be changed. It can only be understood, accepted, and released. Close your eyes. Let the stone columns dissolve into mist. Let the golden light of Rome dim into a soft, velvety blackness. There is nothing more to see. There is nothing more to buy or sell. There is only the quiet, the deep, restorative quiet of the earth. Sleep now. The market is closed. The city is sleeping. And so are you. Sleep, sleep, sleep. Good night. If this journey through the duller side of history helped you unwind and maybe even drift off, please let me know. First, hit that like button if you enjoyed this historical lullaby. Second, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future installments of history too boring to keep you awake. Finally, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below about which historical topic you find so mundane. It deserves to be our next sleepy video. Your suggestions will shape our journey into the world's most delightfully dull past.